Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the English Talk Community playlist. I'm Julia, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Whether this is your very first time tuning in or you've been listening for a while, I want to thank you for choosing to spend this moment with us. This podcast is your space to grow in your English journey. And not just grow, but feel inspired, supported, and connected as you do it. We believe that learning English doesn't have to be stressful, overwhelming, or lonely. It can be natural, empowering, and even fun, especially when you're part of a community that gets you. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who just seemed to pick up English so fast? Maybe a classmate, a coworker, or even someone online. You watch them speak fluently after what feels like such a short amount of time, and you think, how did they do that? Maybe it even made you question your own progress. Maybe you felt like you were missing something, like there's some secret strategy or magical method that helps certain people become fluent faster. If you've ever felt that way, you're definitely not alone. I've met so many learners from different parts of the world who felt stuck, frustrated, or discouraged simply because they were comparing themselves to others. But here's the thing. The people who learn English fast aren't necessarily smarter, younger, or born in the right place. What they do have, however, is a set of powerful habits that they stick to, day after day, moment after moment. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in this episode. Today, we'll explore the specific habits of people who learn English fast. I'm going to share stories of real learners, people just like you, from different countries and different backgrounds. Some of them are professionals looking to grow their careers. Others are students, parents, travelers, or even retirees. But they all have something in common. They figured out how to make English a part of their daily lives in simple, intentional ways. And the best part? You can do it too. I want you to really think about your own experience as you listen. Think about your current habits. What's already working for you? And what could be getting in the way? Are you consistent in your practice? Do you enjoy what you're doing? Or do you sometimes feel like you're just going through the motions without real progress? You see, when we talk about habits, we're not just talking about what you study or how many hours you spend learning. We're talking about the little things that happen every single day. The choices you make when no one is watching. The way you respond when something feels hard. The voice you use when you talk to yourself. These are the invisible parts of your learning journey, but they're also the most powerful. In this episode, we'll look at things like consistency, mindset, exposure, and how to make learning feel natural rather than forced. You'll hear how people from countries like Japan, Brazil, Turkey, France, and Nigeria developed habits that helped them go from understanding English to actually speaking it and enjoying the process. Some of these habits might surprise you. Others might sound simple, maybe even too simple, but that's the beauty of it. Learning English doesn't have to be complicated to be effective. It just has to be intentional and consistent. Now, I want to make this episode feel personal, like a conversation between us. So, as you listen, I encourage you to reflect on your own journey. Maybe you're someone who watches a lot of English videos but doesn't feel confident speaking. Maybe you read well but freeze when it's time to talk. Or maybe you've been learning English for years and feel like you're stuck at the same level. Whatever your situation is, I want you to know, there's always a way forward. And it often starts by adjusting the small things you do every day. Let's talk about what those small things look like. Let's explore what the most successful English learners actually do, because when we understand their habits, we can begin to model them, to adapt them to our own lives in ways that feel natural and sustainable. You don't need to change everything overnight. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to take one small step in the right direction and keep going. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, get comfortable, and let's dive into this journey together. By the end of this episode, my goal is for you to feel encouraged, informed, and excited about the small changes you can start making today. Because every big transformation begins with one small habit, and you are absolutely capable of making that change. Are you ready? Let's begin. Let's talk about something that may seem simple, but actually makes a huge difference in how fast you learn English: building a consistent habit. Not just studying when you have time, not just when you feel motivated or when your schedule magically opens up, but actually turning English into a daily practice. Now, I know that sounds easier said than done. Life is busy. We have work, school, family, responsibilities, And sometimes we're just tired. So when someone says, you should study every day, it can feel like pressure. But here's the secret. It's not about how much time you have. It's about how often you show up. Even small, regular moments with English can take you farther than long, random study sessions. Let me tell you about someone who proved that in a powerful way. His name is Kenji. He's from Osaka, Japan. A few years ago, Kenji realized that his English wasn't improving, even though he had studied on and off for several years. He would go through phases, studying a lot for a few weeks, then stopping completely for months. He tried apps, online courses, even group classes, but nothing seemed to stick. Every time he came back to studying, it felt like he had to start all over again. Sound familiar? One day, Kenji decided to try something different. He made a personal rule, just 15 minutes a day, every day, no matter what. It didn't matter if he was tired or busy, or didn't feel like it. He would sit down at the same time every evening after dinner and spend 15 minutes with English. Sometimes he listened to a podcast. Sometimes he read a short article. Other days, he reviewed vocabulary or practiced speaking out loud. But it was always 15 minutes and he stuck to it. No excuses, no exceptions. At first, it didn't feel like much. He even doubted whether it was doing anything. But after a few weeks, he noticed something. Words started to stay in his memory longer. He didn't feel so nervous when listening to English audio. He even caught himself thinking in English during conversations with friends who were also learning. And the best part? He didn't feel overwhelmed. That small daily habit became a natural part of his routine, like brushing his teeth or making coffee. It wasn't something extra anymore. It was just something he did. After 6 months of this consistent practice, Kenji's English had improved more than it had in the past 3 years. Not because he was studying more hours, but because he was studying more often. His brain started recognizing patterns. His confidence grew. And most importantly, he felt proud of himself. That daily habit changed his entire relationship with the language. So, why am I telling you this? Because we often think we need to do a lot to get results. But the truth is, consistency beats intensity every time. The people who learn English fast are not the ones who study for 5 hours once a week. They're the ones who study for 15 minutes every day. That regular, predictable contact with the language keeps the brain active, keeps the learning fresh, and builds momentum. You don't need a big plan or fancy tools. You just need a decision, a clear commitment to yourself. Now let me offer you a simple challenge. Think about your day. From the moment you wake up until the time you go to sleep, where is the moment that feels the most stable? It might be during breakfast. Maybe it's right after work. Maybe it's just before bed. Identify that moment and make it your English time. Start with just 10 or 15 minutes. Put it in your calendar. Treat it like an appointment with yourself. And then show up for it. Even when you're tired, even when you're not in the mood. Over time, it will become easier. It will become part of your identity. You'll go from someone trying to learn English to someone who practices English every day. And here's another tip. Don't wait for motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Habits stay. When you create a habit, you don't need to convince yourself to study. You just do it. And the more automatic it becomes, the less effort it takes to start. That's how you build long-term success. That's how people like Kenji go from stuck to fluent without burning out. This habit-building idea doesn't just apply to English. It applies to anything you want to improve in life. But when it comes to language learning, consistency creates familiarity. Familiarity creates confidence. And confidence makes speaking feel more natural. So let me ask you something. What would it look like if you created that kind of habit for yourself? What if, starting today, you decided on a fixed time, just 15 minutes, to focus on English every single day? No pressure to do it perfectly. No need to study for hours. Just a short, focused moment of connection with the language. Imagine how much progress you could make in the next 30 days, 60 days, 6 months. Not by doing more, but by showing up more often. Let's make it real right now. Take a moment and think. What is the best time of your day to study English every day? Maybe it's right after lunch, or just before you turn off the lights at night. Think about a time you can control, a moment that feels calm and predictable. Got it? That's your new English time. And once you commit to it, even for just a few minutes a day, you're going to start noticing changes. Not just in your vocabulary or grammar, but in your confidence, your focus, and your motivation to keep going. This one small habit can create a powerful ripple effect in your learning journey. So let's not wait for the perfect moment to study. Let's create the moment. And let's do it together, one day at a time. One of the most powerful things you can do to improve your English, without adding more hours to your day, is to simply change the environment around you. I'm talking about creating a space where you are constantly surrounded by English, even when you're not studying. You don't need to live in an English-speaking country to do this. You don't need to travel, take expensive classes, or have a native-speaking friend. You just need to build an atmosphere where English becomes part of your everyday experience, and you can start doing that right now, exactly where you are. Let me tell you the story of Amina. She's from Alexandria, Egypt. Amina had always wanted to speak English fluently, but like many people, she struggled with consistency. She used to think that in order to really improve, she needed to sit down with a textbook or go to a class, and when life got busy, those moments just didn't happen. She worked full-time, had a young daughter at home, and by the time the day was over, she was too tired to open a grammar book. So English always stayed in the background, something she wanted to do, but couldn't find the time or energy for. One day, Amina decided to try something new. She wasn't going to change her schedule. She wasn't going to find more hours in the day. She was just going to change what she heard and saw every day. The first thing she did was change the language on her phone. Suddenly, all her apps, her settings, even her messages, everything was in English. At first, it felt strange. She had to guess what some of the buttons meant. She made a few mistakes. But after a few days, it started to feel natural. Her brain began connecting the words with their functions. She wasn't memorizing vocabulary, she was living it. Then she started listening to music in English. Every morning on her way to work, instead of listening to the news in Arabic or music in her native language, she put on English playlists. At first, she didn't understand every word, but she noticed the rhythm, the emotion, the tone. She found herself repeating some of the lyrics. Then she added short English podcasts, just 5 or 10 minutes. She didn't always understand everything, but the voices became familiar. The way people spoke started to make sense. She heard patterns, she started recognizing common phrases, and something amazing began to happen. Without even sitting down to study, Amina started thinking in English. She noticed her daughter repeating some of the English songs they listened to together. Her vocabulary started growing, not because she was writing down new words, but because she was hearing them again and again in different contexts. She was building familiarity, and her brain loved it. Here's why this works. Your brain is a pattern machine. It's always looking for repetition, rhythm, and structure. When you hear a word once, your brain might ignore it. When you hear it 5 times, it starts paying attention. When you hear it 10 or 20 times, your brain stores it, not as something you memorized, but as something that feels familiar. This is how we learned our first language. Not through grammar books or vocabulary lists, but through repeated exposure, through patterns, through everyday sounds. And we can recreate that process with English, no matter where we live. So let me ask you, what does your environment sound like right now? What's the first thing you hear in the morning? What plays in the background while you clean, cook, drive, or exercise? What language are you seeing on your phone, your computer, your social media? These small things might not feel important, but over time they shape your brain. They shape the way you think and respond. The more English you put around you, the more natural it will start to feel. Now, here's a practical way to start. Choose 1 or 2 areas of your daily routine and turn them into English time. Not study time, just exposure time. Change the language of your phone to English. If that feels like too much at first, just change one app, like your browser or your email. Start small, then find a podcast or playlist in English that you actually enjoy. It could be about cooking, fitness, travel, business, or even language learning. Put it on while you're doing something else. You don't have to understand every word. Just let the language live in your environment. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. You might catch yourself thinking, what's the point if I don't understand everything? But that's the point. You don't need to understand everything right away. Your brain is working behind the scenes, recognizing sounds, connecting phrases, building a foundation. And with repetition, everything starts to make more sense. The goal here isn't perfection. The goal is presence. Keep English present in your life every single day, even in small ways. The more you hear it, the more familiar it becomes. The more familiar it becomes, the easier it is to speak, to think, to express yourself. It's like building a relationship with the language. And just like with any relationship, time, presence, and shared experiences matter. I'll say this again, because it's so important. Your brain loves patterns. Give it patterns in English, not just once a week, not just when you have time, but every day, in the background of your life. Let English become part of your atmosphere. Surround yourself with the language in small, consistent ways, and you'll be amazed at how much you grow, even when you're not trying to study. So think about your daily life. What could you change today? What song, what podcast, what part of your routine could be done in English instead of your native language? Don't wait for a perfect moment. Start with something small and keep repeating it. Your brain. Let's talk about one of the biggest breakthroughs for anyone learning English, focusing on simple, useful phrases instead of trying to learn complicated grammar or endless vocabulary lists. This is something that can completely change how you approach learning the language. And the best part? You don't need to be advanced to start using this method. You can begin exactly where you are. I know many learners feel pressure to speak perfectly or to sound like a native speaker, but that's not the goal. The real goal is communication. If you can make yourself understood, if you can say what you need to say clearly and naturally, then you are already succeeding. Let me introduce you to Miguel. He's from Guadalajara, Mexico. A few years ago, Miguel had the opportunity to take a job in Canada. The position was in construction, and while the job itself didn't require perfect English, it did require basic communication, understanding instructions, answering simple questions, asking for help, or just having a short chat with coworkers during breaks. The problem was, Miguel didn't speak much English at all. He had studied a bit in school, but like many people, he forgot most of it because he never really used it in real life. Now here's the interesting part. Miguel didn't try to go back and review all the grammar rules. He didn't sign up for a long course. Instead, he focused on one thing: learning useful everyday phrases. Not individual words, not complicated sentences, just phrases that he knew he would need in real situations. He wrote them down in a notebook. Things like, "Can you show me how to do this?" Or, "I need help with this part," or, "What time is lunch?" or, "Sorry, I didn't understand." These were not fancy sentences. They were practical, simple, direct, and they were exactly what he needed. Miguel practiced these phrases every day. On the bus, during lunch, before bed. He would say them out loud, repeat them in his head, and imagine situations where he would need to use them. He even recorded himself and listened back. The repetition made them automatic. When he finally arrived in Canada, he wasn't fluent, but he was ready. He could respond quickly. He understood what people were saying most of the time, especially when they used familiar phrases. And he wasn't afraid to speak. That made all the difference. After a few months, Miguel's confidence grew. Because he already had a small toolbox of phrases that worked, he started building on them naturally. He picked up new words at work, noticed how others spoke, and added more phrases to his list. His English improved faster than he expected, not because he learned more, but because he learned better. He focused on what he would actually use. And that's the key. Learn what you will use. Don't worry about sounding advanced. Don't try to impress anyone. Focus on being clear, being functional, saying what you need to say. Because the truth is, you don't need 1,000 words. To have a good conversation, you need the right ones. So here's a practical tip. Instead of trying to memorize new vocabulary today, sit down and think about the situations where you would actually need to speak English. Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's when you travel. Maybe it's online, chatting with people. What do you need to say in those moments? Write down the top 10 phrases that you think you would use the most. Then say them out loud. Practice them slowly, then faster. Listen to how they sound. Repeat them every day until they feel easy. And when you learn new phrases, learn them in full. Don't just learn the word need. Learn I need help. Learn do you need anything. Learn phrases the way they are actually spoken. That way, your brain learns them as ready-to-use tools. You won't have to build a sentence from scratch every time. You'll just say what you need to say naturally. Think of it like learning to cook. You don't need to know every spice in the world. You just need to know the recipes you actually use. It's the same with English. Learn the phrases you actually need. This strategy is also great for your confidence. When you know you have useful sentences ready in your mind, you're more likely to speak. You feel safer, more prepared, and that makes you more willing to try. More speaking means more practice. More practice means faster improvement. It's a cycle, and it starts with choosing the right phrases. I want you to think about this for a moment. If you had to speak with someone in English today, what would you say? What questions would you need to ask? What answers would you want to give? Would you know how to start a conversation? How to respond politely? How to ask for something? How to say you don't understand? These are the phrases you need to focus on first. You don't need to sound like a textbook. You need to sound like you in English. So think in situations. Think in phrases. Imagine the real moments in your life where English would be useful and build your learning around those. Don't just learn language for the test. Learn it for your life. Let me ask you directly now. What phrases would you actually use if you had to talk to someone in English today? Think about it seriously. Would you ask for help? Would you introduce yourself? Would you order something at a restaurant? Would you need to give your opinion? Start there. Write those phrases down. Practice them. Make them part of your personal English vocabulary. These are the building blocks of fluency. Not big words, not perfect grammar, just real, useful, everyday language that helps you connect. And once you have that, everything else becomes easier. Let's take a moment to talk about something that holds so many English learners back: perfectionism. That feeling that you shouldn't speak unless you're sure your sentence is correct, or that fear of saying the wrong word and being judged. This is something that almost every language learner goes through. But the truth is, perfectionism doesn't help you learn. In fact, it often gets in the way. Real progress comes when you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to communicate. When you accept mistakes not as failures, but as part of the process. That's where the real growth begins. I want to tell you about Sophie. She's from Lyon in the south of France. Sophie had been studying English for many years. She had a good vocabulary, a solid understanding of grammar, and she could write fairly well. But when it came to speaking, she completely froze. Every time she had to speak with someone in English, her heart would race, her mind would go blank, and she would either stay silent or speak so quietly that no one could hear her. The fear of making a mistake was so strong that it stopped her from even trying. She told herself things like, "What if I say it wrong?" Or "What if they laugh at me?" Or "What if I make a fool of myself?" So instead of speaking, she just listened. In meetings at work, she never volunteered to speak. When traveling, she avoided conversations. At language exchanges, she would smile and nod, but rarely say anything. The result? Her English didn't improve the way she wanted, and she stayed stuck in that place of fear. Everything changed for Sophie when she traveled to Ireland for a short training course. She had to stay with a host family, attend workshops, and interact with other participants from around the world, all in English. And in the beginning, it was hard. She made mistakes, she misunderstood people, and she felt embarrassed more than once. But something interesting happened. People didn't laugh at her. They didn't judge her. They listened. They responded kindly. Some even helped her find the right words. And slowly, Sophie realized something. Making mistakes wasn't the end of the world. It was actually how she was learning. She began to speak more. She stopped worrying about every little grammar detail. She focused on getting her message across. She started taking notes when she made a mistake or when someone corrected her. She began keeping a small notebook of these errors, not to feel ashamed of them, but to learn from them. Each mistake became a small lesson, a stepping stone. By the end of the course, Sophie was speaking with much more confidence. She was still making mistakes, but now she was using them. She was learning through them. And when she went back to France, she kept that mindset. She joined a local speaking group. She made it her mission to speak at least once a day, even if she wasn't sure she was saying it perfectly. Her English improved faster in 6 months than it had in the previous 3 years. There's a powerful message in Sophie's story. Mistakes are not something to avoid. They are something to use. They are feedback. They are data. They show you what you need to work on, and they push you forward. The more you speak, the more you'll discover what you don't know. And that's a good thing. because now you know where to focus. Let me give you a simple but effective tip. The next time you make a mistake, don't ignore it. Don't feel embarrassed. Instead, write it down. Maybe you said a word incorrectly. Maybe your sentence didn't make sense. Maybe someone corrected you. That's valuable information. Keep a small notebook or a note on your phone where you collect your mistakes. Review them from time to time. You'll be surprised how much you can learn from them. And more than anything, keep speaking. Even if your sentence isn't perfect. Even if your accent is strong. Even if you forget a word. Speak anyway. Because the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to connect. To express yourself. To be understood. And you can do that, even with mistakes. I know it's not easy to let go of the fear. But ask yourself this. What's more important, speaking perfectly or being able to share your ideas and feelings? The world is full of people who speak with different accents, who use different grammar structures, who mix words from different languages. Communication is not about perfection, it's about connection. And every time you speak, even with errors, you're getting better, you're practicing, you're building confidence. Perfectionism often hides behind the idea that you're just being careful or that you want to be respectful. But deep down, it's usually fear. Fear of looking silly. Fear of being judged. Fear of making a mistake. And that fear is what keeps you silent. It keeps you stuck. The only way to break that pattern is to act anyway, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when you know it won't come out perfect. So try this. The next time you catch yourself holding back, remind yourself it's okay to make mistakes. It's part of the journey. Speak anyway. Write down what didn't go well. Learn from it. Then try again. The people who improve the fastest are not the ones who speak perfectly. They're the ones who are willing to keep trying over and over again without waiting to be perfect. Think of children. They make hundreds of mistakes when learning to speak. They mix up words, they invent grammar, but they keep going. They laugh, they learn, and they become fluent because they never stop trying. You can do the same. Let me suggest something that could really help you grow. Keep a daily reflection journal. Every time you use English, whether it's in a conversation, in class, or even just speaking to yourself, write down 2 things. Something you did well and something you want to improve. This will shift your mindset from fear to curiosity. You'll start seeing your mistakes not as failures, but as clues. And those clues will take you further than you ever imagined. So now I want to ask you, just like I asked Sophie once, are you letting perfectionism stop you from speaking? And more importantly, what would happen if you stopped waiting to be perfect and just started speaking now? Let's talk about one of the most powerful techniques in language learning, intelligent repetition. You might have heard the phrase before, but let me explain exactly what it means and how you can use it to remember more English with less stress. You see, many learners think they just need to keep studying new things every day to improve. But what often happens is that they forget what they studied yesterday, or even an hour ago. It's not because they're lazy or not smart. It's because they're not reviewing in a smart way. There's actually a method that helps your brain hold on to new words and phrases much longer. It's called spaced repetition. And it works with how your memory naturally operates. The idea is simple. Instead of repeating the same thing over and over again in a short period, you review it just before your brain is about to forget it. That way, each time you review, the information becomes a little stronger in your memory. The intervals between reviews become longer and longer, and eventually, the word or phrase sticks. Sometimes for life. I want to tell you about Daniel. He's from Lagos, Nigeria. Daniel works in tech and wanted to improve his English for better career opportunities. He had studied English in school and he knew a lot of grammar rules, but he always felt like he was forgetting vocabulary. He'd learn a new word in the morning, and by the afternoon it was gone. He'd read an article or watch a video, pick up a few new expressions, and the next day, he couldn't remember any of them. He started to feel frustrated, like he was working hard but not getting results. Then he discovered the idea of spaced repetition. At first, he was skeptical. It sounded too simple, but he decided to give it a try. He downloaded an app that was designed for language learners, one that used this spaced repetition system. He began by adding just 10 phrases that he had trouble remembering. The app would then remind him to review those phrases the next day, then 3 days later, then a week later, and so on. The app tracked how well he remembered each item, and adjusted the schedule based on his performance. After just 1 week, Daniel noticed something surprising. He could actually remember the phrases, not just one or two, but all of them. And they didn't just stay in his short-term memory. They were available when he needed them, like during meetings or casual conversations. The method was working, and Daniel began to trust the process. He kept adding more phrases. He reviewed them daily, not for hours, but just 10 or 15 minutes. Over time, he built a strong base of vocabulary and common expressions that he could use naturally and confidently. What made the difference wasn't how much he was studying, but how he was reviewing. Intelligent repetition helped Daniel move from forgetting to remembering and from memorizing to using. And that's exactly what I want you to experience too. Let's talk about how you can apply this in your own English routine. You don't need to use a special app, although many are available and helpful. You can do it with a notebook, flashcards, or even notes on your phone. The key is the timing. When you learn a new word or phrase, don't just read it once and move on. Come back to it the next day, then again in 3 days, then after a week. Each time you review, try to use it in a sentence. Say it out loud, connect it to a situation in your life. The more active you are with your review, the better your memory will hold it. For example, let's say today you learn the phrase, "Can you help me with this?" It's a useful phrase you might use at work or school. Review it tomorrow, then wait 3 days and review it again. Then wait a week. During each review, try saying it in different ways. Imagine real situations. Maybe you're at the airport. Maybe you're trying to fix your computer. Use the phrase in those imaginary contexts. That's what makes repetition intelligent. It's not just about seeing the words again, it's about using them in ways your brain understands. This approach also helps you avoid one of the biggest traps in language learning, forgetting everything you studied after a few weeks. With regular, spaced reviews, your brain strengthens the connections. It moves the information from short-term to long-term memory. That's why you can still remember songs from your childhood or your phone number, even if you haven't said them in a long time. Your brain locked them in. With repetition and context, you can do the same with English. One of the things I love about spaced repetition is how flexible it is. You can start small, just 5 or 10 phrases at a time. Review them during your coffee break, on the bus, or before bed. You don't need to sit at a desk with a big textbook. And as you build the habit, it becomes part of your daily life. You'll start to notice patterns. You'll feel more confident when speaking. You'll stop thinking, "I learned that word, but I forgot it," because now you're training your memory with intention. I often tell learners, learning English is like planting a garden. If you just throw seeds on the ground once and walk away, not much will grow. But if you water those seeds a little every day, they start to take root. Repetition is the watering. And spaced repetition is the smart way to do it so you don't waste time and energy. Here's a practical structure you can try. Day 1, you learn a new phrase or word. Write it down. Say it aloud. Then review it the next day. On day 4, review it again. Then again on day 8. If you keep forgetting, it shortens the time between reviews. If it's easy to remember, you can stretch the interval. You're training your brain to recognize that this information is important, and your brain will listen. It wants to be efficient. Let's make this even more useful. Keep a weekly review. Schedule. Every Sunday, for example, go over everything you learned that week. Ask yourself, which words still feel unfamiliar? Which ones come naturally? Which ones need another round of review? This kind of reflection turns you into an active learner. You're not just going through the motions. You're making smart decisions about how to study. And remember, repetition doesn't mean boredom. It means confidence. It means progress. The more you review, the more you own the language. English becomes something you use, not something you're trying to remember. So try this. Start with just 5 new phrases this week. Review them tomorrow. Then again in 3 days. Then again next week. Use them. Speak them. Write them. Let them become part of your personal English toolkit. This simple strategy can completely change how you learn and how fast you grow. Let's explore one of the most enjoyable and effective ways to learn English: learning through real contexts. This is something that often surprises people. When we think about learning a language, we usually picture textbooks, grammar exercises, maybe a classroom with a whiteboard. But what if I told you that some of the most successful learners are those who immerse themselves in English without even opening a traditional textbook? Let me tell you about Sara. She's from São Paulo, Brazil. A few years ago, she wanted to improve her English, but every time she tried to sit down with a grammar book, she felt bored and disconnected. It felt like a chore. She would read a rule, try to memorize it, but nothing really stayed. She felt frustrated. Then, one evening, while scrolling through her favorite streaming platform, she saw that one of her favorite reality shows had an English version with subtitles. She clicked play out of curiosity. That night, she watched 3 episodes. Not because she was trying to study, but because she was hooked on the drama, the conversations, the humor. The next night, she watched again. And again. After a few weeks, she noticed something incredible. She was picking up phrases, expressions, and even jokes, without really trying. What happened to Sara wasn't magic. It was exposure. It was her brain learning in the way it actually prefers, through real emotion, sound, and image, all working together. When you see someone smile and say, "I'm so excited," your brain doesn't just process the words. It sees the face, hears the tone, feels the emotion. That's powerful. That's how babies learn language. That's how you learned your first language. And that same system still works. The combination of context, sound, and emotion creates something deeper than memorization. It creates understanding. When you watch someone react, when you hear natural conversation, when you feel a connection to the content, that's when real learning happens. Sara wasn't studying the present perfect tense, but she was hearing it, feeling it, and understanding when people used it. And that made it stick. This is why I always say, don't force yourself to study only from books. Find content that you genuinely enjoy. Whether it's a cooking show, a travel vlog, a comedy series, or even video game streams, if it grabs your attention and makes you feel something, it will teach you more than you expect. The key is to watch with intention. Don't just let the English wash over you. Pay attention. Notice expressions. Repeat what you hear. Pause and try to guess what's being said before reading the subtitles. One of the best things about learning from real contexts is that it gives you language that people actually use. Think about it. How many times have you learned a sentence in a book that sounded completely unnatural when you tried to use it? In conversation? That's because written English and spoken English can be very different. Shows, podcasts, and videos give you access to real speech, with real rhythm, real pronunciation, and real emotion. That's what you want to learn. Sara took things further after her reality show phase. She started watching English-speaking YouTubers who talked about things she loved: fashion, relationships, and even her favorite topic, personality types. She watched interviews, behind-the-scenes clips, and fan edits, all in English. Some had subtitles, some didn't. But she kept watching. She started saying phrases out loud that she heard in the videos. At first, it felt silly. But soon, those phrases became automatic. She didn't have to translate in her head anymore. She just spoke. That's another important part of learning from context. When your brain is constantly seeing and hearing the language in real situations, it starts to recognize patterns. It learns when to say, "I would love to," instead of "I want." It hears how people naturally say kinda instead of kind of. These small details make a huge difference in how natural your English sounds. And the best part? You don't have to study each one. You just absorb them, like you did with your first language. Now, of course, watching content in English won't magically make you fluent overnight, but it will change how you feel about English. It makes it more alive, more connected to your real interests. And that motivation, that emotional connection, is what keeps you going. Sara didn't watch those shows because she had to. She watched because she wanted to. And because of that, she watched consistently. She started to think in English, to dream in English. That's what real exposure can do. So, here's a practical tip for you. Choose one show, podcast, or YouTube channel in English that covers a topic you love. Don't worry about whether it's advanced or beginner level. Just find something that keeps your attention. Start watching or listening a little every day, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Use subtitles in your native language at first if you need to. Then switch to English subtitles. Eventually, try without any subtitles at all. Repeat your favorite parts. Try shadowing. That means repeating what the person says as soon as they say it, like you're echoing them. It's a fun way to train your pronunciation and rhythm. And remember, this isn't just entertainment. This is learning with intention. Every moment you spend listening to real English, even when you don't understand everything, is a step forward. Your brain is doing the work in the background. You're building familiarity. You're training your ears. You're getting used to how English really sounds. So think about it. What kind of content do you already enjoy in your own language? Could you find something similar in English? Could you turn your relaxation time into learning time without it feeling like a task? That's what Sara did. And that's what you can do too. Let English become part of your world, your personality, your habits. Because when learning becomes living, progress comes naturally. One habit that makes a huge difference in language learning, but often gets overlooked, is this: writing things down. Yes, something as simple as taking a note can be the key that helps you remember new vocabulary, fix common mistakes, and actually own what you've learned. There's something powerful about turning a thought into a written word. It slows your mind down. It forces you to engage with the language in a deeper way. And the best part? You don't need any special tools to do it. Let me tell you about Peter. He's from Munich, Germany, and he works in IT. He started learning English because he wanted to apply for remote jobs and collaborate with international teams. At first, he was using apps, watching videos, and doing everything he thought he needed to do. But he had one big problem. He kept forgetting what he had just learned. He would see a new word one day, then completely forget it by the next. He felt like he was going in circles. That's when he made a small but powerful change. He bought a little notebook and started carrying it with him wherever he went. Every time he heard a new word or came across an expression he didn't fully understand, he would write it down. Not on his phone, not in a digital file, but with a pen on paper. At first, it was just a few words a day, but over time, this notebook became his personal dictionary. It was full of real, useful English, things he actually wanted to remember. Peter told me something interesting. He said that just the act of writing helped him remember the words better, even before reviewing them. It's like his brain paid more attention when he wrote things by hand. That's something a lot of people experience. When you write something down, especially by hand, you're using more of your senses. You're seeing the word, hearing it in your head, and moving your hand to create it. That combination makes the memory stronger. But Peter didn't stop there. Every morning, before work, he would spend 5 minutes reviewing his notes from the day before. Just 5 minutes. Nothing complicated. He would read the words out loud, try to use them in a sentence, and sometimes even draw a little picture next to the word to help him remember it better. This tiny routine, writing and reviewing, helped him build a much stronger vocabulary base than any app had done for him. Now, maybe you're not a fan of handwriting. That's totally fine. The same principle works with digital tools too. You can use the Notes app on your phone or a simple text file. Some people even use voice memos. The important thing is to capture the words in a way that's meaningful to you. If you like visuals, add pictures. If you think better by speaking, record yourself. The goal is to make the new language yours. And here's another benefit of keeping notes. When you look back at them after a few weeks or months, you can actually see your progress. You'll notice how many words you've learned, how your notes become more detailed, how your understanding has deepened. That kind of motivation is priceless. It shows you that even on days when you felt stuck, you were still moving forward. Let's also talk about what kind of things you should be writing down. It's not just vocabulary. You can write full sentences, examples of how a word is used, or even small dialogues you hear. If you hear someone say something interesting in a video, pause and write it down. If you're reading a post and a word jumps out at you, take a second to note it. And if you make a mistake when speaking, that's a perfect thing to write down. 2. Write the incorrect version and the corrected one next to it. Over time, those small corrections will add up. And here's something else to think about. When you write things down, you're building your own personalized learning resource. Unlike a generic book or course, your notebook is 100% tailored to you. Your life, your interests, your mistakes, your goals. That's incredibly powerful. It's like having a custom-made textbook that grows with you. One thing I often suggest is to set a simple goal. Write down 3 new things in English every day. Just 3. It could be a word, a phrase, a sentence, or a question. Maybe something you heard in a podcast. Maybe something you read online. The key is consistency. If you write 3 things a day, that's over 20 words a week. In a month, that's close to 100. And in a year, you'll have learned more than 1,000 new pieces of English, all because you took a few minutes to write them down. So let me ask you, what if you did that starting today? What if, right now, you opened your phone's notes app or grabbed a notebook and wrote down the last 3 words or phrases in English that caught your attention? Maybe it was something I just said. Maybe it was something you saw on social media earlier today. It doesn't matter. The important thing is to start. Start building your habit of collecting the language around you. I truly believe this is one of the simplest and most effective habits anyone can build. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't cost anything. And it gives you a tool you can use every single day. Your notes become your language companion, always there when you need to refresh, practice, or just remember how far you've come. So, as we talk about these powerful learning habits, I invite you to give this one a try. Write things down. Not later. Today. Right now if you can. And tomorrow, review what you wrote. Then add a few more. Let this habit become part of your day. It might seem small, but the impact over time is huge. Let me leave you with this question. What 3 new English words or phrases will you write down today? Think about it. Maybe even say them out loud to yourself. Because once you start collecting your English, you'll be surprised how fast it grows. If you're waiting to feel ready before you start speaking English with others, let me tell you something important. That moment may never come. Confidence in speaking a new language doesn't appear magically one day. It builds slowly through real experiences, real conversations, and small moments of courage. And one of the biggest habits I've seen in people who learn English fast is this. They start talking, even when they still feel unsure. They take that first step, and then another, and they keep going. So today I want to talk with you about the power of conversation and why you don't need to be fluent to begin. Let me share the story of Fatima. She's from Izmir, a beautiful coastal city in Turkey. Fatima had been studying English for years. She took classes in school, used apps, watched YouTube videos. She even knew a lot of grammar rules. But she had one big obstacle. She never practiced speaking. She was afraid of making mistakes, afraid of sounding silly, and mostly afraid of not understanding other people. Because of that, she stayed silent. She would say to herself, I'll join a conversation group when I'm better. Maybe next month, maybe next year. But then something changed. One day, Fatima found an online English conversation group hosted on a free video platform. It was small, casual, and made up of learners from around the world. People just like her. They weren't fluent either. Some were nervous. Some made a lot of mistakes. But they were speaking, and that inspired her. She joined, listened quietly the first time, and the second time, too. By the third meeting, she introduced herself. Just a few words. Hi, I'm Fatima. I'm from Turkey. I'm happy to be here. It might sound like a small step, but for her, it was huge. That one sentence was the beginning of a new phase in her learning. She kept joining every week, saying a little more each time. She asked questions. She answered when others asked her something. Sometimes she stumbled over words, but no one judged her. Everyone was there to learn. And week by week, her confidence started to grow. Not just her vocabulary, but her belief that she could actually speak English. Fatima told me something that really stayed with me. She said, I thought I needed fluency before speaking, but I discovered that speaking is how fluency grows. That's the message I want to share with you today. If you're waiting to feel perfect before opening your mouth, you're going to miss hundreds of opportunities to improve. The truth is, language isn't just something you study. It's something you use. And the more you use it, the more it becomes part of you. So what can you do if you want to follow Fatima's example? You don't need to join a big program or pay for private lessons. There are so many free ways to find people to practice English with. Look for online communities, language exchange platforms, or even social media groups for English learners. There are apps where you can find a conversation partner from another country, someone who wants to practice your language while helping you practice theirs. And there are video calls, voice chats, or even just text conversations. The options are there. You just need to say yes to one, and you might be thinking, but what if I don't understand the other person? That's okay. That's part of the process. Use simple phrases to ask for repetition, like, can you say that again, please? Or, I didn't understand that part. People are more patient than you think, especially when they know you're learning. And when you push through those uncomfortable moments, you come out stronger on the other side. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being present, being in the conversation, participating, even when it feels messy. Fluency is not a destination, it's a result. The result of many, many imperfect conversations. That's how your brain starts to connect ideas faster. That's how you learn to listen, think, and respond more naturally. And don't underestimate the emotional benefits. Speaking with real people gives you a sense of connection, of purpose. You start to feel less alone in your journey. You meet others who are struggling with the same challenges, and suddenly, you realize you're not the only one afraid to speak. That shared experience creates motivation. It gives you the energy to keep going, even on days when English feels difficult. Let's get practical now. If you're wondering how to begin, here's a simple idea. Commit to one conversation this week. Just one. It could be with a friend who speaks English or a fellow learner. You could write a post in an English learning group and say, "Hi, I'm looking for someone to practice English with. I'm a beginner, but I'm excited to learn." You'll be surprised how many people respond. There are millions of people all over the world trying to do exactly what you're doing. Why not do it together? You can also join platforms that organize weekly meetups for English conversation. Some of them offer themed discussions, where you talk about a specific topic each week. That gives you a structure and helps take the pressure off. You don't need to think of what to say. The topic is already chosen. And if you're shy, you can start by listening, then slowly join in, just like Fatima did. And if even that feels like too much right now, try practicing with voice messages. Record a short message and send it to a friend who's learning too. Ask them to do the same. That way you get used to speaking without the stress of a live conversation. Over time, you'll build the confidence to speak in real time. So here's what I want you to remember. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need a big vocabulary. You don't need to wait until you're ready. Because the truth is, you're already ready enough to start. Start small. Start scared. Start anyway. Your future fluent self will thank you for every single word you dared to say today. And let me ask you something. If you had to speak in English with someone tomorrow, what would you say? What words would you use? What questions would you ask? Think about it. That's your starting point. Write it down. Practice it out loud. And then, go find someone to talk to. You've got this. Have you ever listened to someone speak English and thought, "Wow, I wish I could sound like that"? Maybe it was the rhythm of their speech, the way their words flowed naturally, or just how confident they sounded. Well, there's a powerful technique that many successful English learners use to train exactly that, and it's called shadowing. Today, we're going to explore what shadowing is, how to use it, and why it might completely transform the way you speak English. Shadowing is simple, but don't let that fool you. It's incredibly effective. At its core, the technique means repeating what you hear out loud at the same time as the speaker, not after, not later, but as close as possible to the moment they say it. Think of it like singing along to your favorite song, except instead of singing lyrics, you're repeating real English speech, matching the sounds, the rhythm, the pronunciation, and even the emotion. Let me tell you about Andre. He's from Angola. When he started learning English, his grammar was pretty solid, and he could understand quite a lot. But he had one big complaint. Whenever he tried to speak, it just didn't come out right. He said the words, but they didn't sound natural. His rhythm was off. He paused too much. He wasn't sure about the stress on the syllables, and that made him feel self-conscious. He tried a few different things: pronunciation videos, reading out loud, even talking to himself in the mirror. These helped a little, but the real breakthrough came when he discovered shadowing. One day, he came across a short video clip from a movie. It was a simple dialogue between two friends, about 1 minute long. Andre played it and tried to repeat what they said. At first, it was really hard. He kept pausing the video, going back, repeating lines. But he didn't give up. He watched that same 1 minute clip 5 times, then 10, then 20. Something started to shift. The second week, he chose a new clip, then another. He began to feel the rhythm of English and not just understand the words, but feel how they moved. He noticed how the speaker raised their tone when asking a question, how they connected words together, how they used emotion to express themselves. And little by little, Andre's own speech started to change. It became smoother, faster, more confident. The shadowing technique gave him something that no grammar book or vocabulary list ever could: the physical experience of speaking English like a native speaker. He wasn't just studying the language, he was imitating it. And imitation is one of the most natural, powerful ways we learn as humans. Think about how children learn to speak. They don't start with grammar. They start by copying what they hear. They listen, then repeat, again and again, until their brain and mouth start working together. And that's exactly what shadowing trains: the connection between your ears, your brain, and your mouth. It builds what we call muscle memory for language. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to produce natural English speech. You don't have to think so much. Your mouth just knows what to do. So how can you start using shadowing in your routine? First, you need some audio. Start small. Choose something short, no more than 30 to 60 seconds. It could be a clip from a TV show, a scene from a movie, a short YouTube video, a podcast excerpt, or even an English learning app that includes natural dialogue. Make sure the speaker talks clearly and at a natural speed. Subtitles or a transcript can help, especially when you're just starting out. Then, play the clip and listen once without speaking. Just focus on the sound, the intonation, the rhythm. Next, play it again and try to repeat everything the speaker says at the same time as they say it. Not before, not after. Right with them. This is where the challenge begins. You'll stumble. You'll miss words. You'll feel silly. That's okay. It means your brain is working. Do this multiple times. Don't worry about perfection. Focus on rhythm and flow. You can even slow the audio down if needed. Most video players or apps let you reduce the speed to 0.75 or even 0.5. Once you feel more confident, return to normal speed. The goal is to become comfortable moving with the language, not just understanding it in your head. And don't try to shadow difficult lectures or fast news reports right away. Keep it manageable. One great idea is to shadow friendly conversations or storytelling clips. They're more emotional, and that helps you connect with the tone and delivery. Some learners even shadow songs, especially ones with clear vocals, because they're repetitive and easy to memorize. Others use podcast intros or voiceovers from travel videos. The key is, make it enjoyable. Shadowing is something you can do daily, even for just 5 minutes. You don't need a teacher or a partner. All you need is your voice and a device that plays audio. And the more you do it, the more you'll notice improvements, not just in pronunciation, but also in listening, in confidence, in fluency. And here's the best part. It's not about being perfect. In fact, shadowing welcomes imperfection. You're allowed to mess up. You're supposed to mess up. That's how your mouth learns. That's how your ears adjust. That's how your brain connects sounds to meaning. Andre didn't start with perfect shadowing. He started clumsy, unsure, slow. But he stayed consistent, and that consistency changed everything. So let me ask you this. What short audio clip could you shadow today? Maybe it's something you already enjoy, a scene from your favorite series, a podcast you like, a motivational speech. Find one, just one. Then try it, play it, listen, shadow, repeat. Even if your voice shakes, even if you miss half the words, even if you laugh at yourself, do it anyway. Because every repetition is training your brain to speak more naturally. Every attempt brings you one step closer to sounding like the English speaker you want to become. And remember, it's not about copying perfectly. It's about connecting deeply with the language you're learning. So speak it, live it, and shadow your way to fluency. Let's talk about something that can completely change the way you learn English: setting small, clear, and achievable goals. It might sound simple, but this is one of the most powerful habits of people who learn English fast. When you have clear goals, even if they're tiny, you give your brain a direction. You stop wandering through random study materials and start walking on a path with purpose. And the best part is, small goals are easier to follow, easier to measure, and much easier to celebrate. I want to share with you the story of May. She's from China, and she's not a full-time student. She works in a hospital, and her schedule is crazy. She has night shifts, early mornings, and barely any free time. For years, she wanted to improve her English, especially because she dreamed of doing a medical exchange program abroad. But every time she tried to study, she would give up after a few weeks. The problem wasn't her motivation, it was the size of her goals. At first, May told herself, I want to be fluent in 6 months. That sounds exciting, right? But what does fluent even mean? It's a big, vague word. It's hard to measure, and it can feel impossible when life gets busy. So every time May missed a few study sessions, she felt like a failure. She thought, I'm never going to be fluent, and gave up again. This cycle repeated many times. But then, something changed. She joined an online community of English learners, just like this one, and she saw someone share their weekly goal. It was something simple, like learn 5 new phrases this week, or listen to 1 podcast episode and write down 10 new words. And May thought, wait, I can do that too. So she made a new rule for herself. Every Sunday night, she would set a small goal for the week, not a big dream, just one simple action. Her first goal was, learn 5 new phrases I can use with patience. She wrote them on a sticky note and kept it on her desk. Every morning before work, she read them out loud once. That's it. It took less than 2 minutes, but she did it every single day. The next week, her goal was, watch 1 short English video about medical conversations. The week after that, practice introducing myself in English 5 times. And guess what happened? May stopped quitting. Her goals were so small that they didn't feel heavy. They didn't depend on mood or motivation. She didn't need 2 hours of free time. She just needed 5 minutes and a clear idea of what to do. After 3 months, she had learned over 60 useful phrases. She had listened to more than a dozen videos. She had practiced real conversations in English. And for the first time in years, she felt proud of her progress. Why did this work? Because May wasn't focused on the destination. She was focused on the next step. That's the real secret of fast learners. They don't just chase big dreams. They break those dreams into tiny pieces and turn each piece into a habit. And when you collect enough small wins, something beautiful happens. You build confidence. You start to believe in your ability to improve. You create momentum. So let's make this practical. What kind of goals actually help? The best goals are clear, specific, and small enough that you can complete them even on a bad day. Instead of saying, I want to improve my listening, try something like, I'll listen to 1 podcast episode this week and write down 5 new expressions. Instead of, I want to speak better, say, I'll record myself saying 3 phrases today. And instead of, I'll study more, say, I'll review the 5 words I learned yesterday. Think of it this way. Your English journey is a staircase. Big goals are at the top, but to get there, you need steps. Small, realistic, consistent steps. Some people try to jump to the top in one leap and end up falling back. But if you take it step by step, goal by goal, you go further. And more importantly, you don't burn out. Another trick that works well is using time-based goals. For example, I'll study for 10 minutes after breakfast, or I'll review flashcards for 5 minutes before bed. These kinds of goals connect your learning to your daily routine, which makes it more automatic. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to study and start building English into your life. If you're someone who loves structure, you can even write your weekly goal in a notebook or set a reminder on your phone. Some learners post their weekly goals on social media or in language groups as a way to stay accountable. The important thing is not to make it too complicated. 1 simple goal per week is more powerful than 10 random study sessions with no direction. And don't forget to celebrate. When you complete a small goal, recognize it. Say to yourself, I did it. That little moment of celebration tells your brain, this is good. Let's do it again. It builds positive reinforcement, and it turns learning into something joyful instead of stressful. So let me ask you now, what would be 1 small goal that you could set for this week? Think about your routine. Think about what's realistic for your life right now. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It just needs to move you forward. Maybe you can learn 5 phrases. Maybe you can read 1 short article. Maybe you can record your voice saying a few sentences. Whatever it is, make it small, make it clear, and commit to it. And just like May, you might be surprised at how those tiny goals add up over time. 1 week becomes 2. 2 becomes 4. And before you know it, you're not just studying English. You're living it, 1 small goal at a time. Let me tell you something that many English learners overlook, but it makes a huge difference in how fast, and how deeply you learn. Before you move on to a new lesson, a new word, or a new video, take a few minutes to go back. Review what you learned the day before. Just that small step, done consistently, can double your progress over time. It might seem boring at first, but the science behind it is powerful. Your brain needs repetition to form strong connections. And every time you review something, you tell your brain, this is important. Keep it. I want to share the story of Lucas, a university student from Argentina. Lucas started learning English because he wanted to apply for an exchange program in Canada. His biggest challenge was not motivation, it was memory. He would study hard one day, watch videos, write down vocabulary, do exercises, and feel great. But 2 days later, he would realize he forgot most of it. That frustrated him a lot. He thought something was wrong with his memory. But the problem wasn't his brain. It was his method. One day, after talking to a friend who was also learning English, Lucas heard a piece of advice that changed his routine completely. His friend said, "Before I study anything new, I always review what I studied last time." Lucas thought it sounded simple but worth a try, so he changed his approach. Every time he opened his notebook or his learning app, he spent the first 5 minutes looking at what he had studied the day before. He reviewed his notes, repeated the words out loud, and tried to remember the meanings before checking. If he had watched a video lesson the day before, he would quickly rewatch the last 2 minutes or look at the transcript. If he had written down 10 new phrases, he would try to say them again before moving on. This small routine took him less than 10 minutes, but the results were impressive. In just a few weeks, Lucas noticed that the vocabulary was sticking. The grammar rules were clearer. He didn't have to relearn the same things over and over. Why does this work? Because the human brain learns through connections. When you learn something new without reviewing the previous material, it's like trying to build the second floor of a house before the first one is finished. But when you review, you're reinforcing the foundation. You're telling your brain, hey, remember this? We saw it yesterday. It's still important. And when the brain sees repetition with time, it decides to store that information in long-term memory. So here's a very simple but powerful tip. Start every study session by going back. Just 5 minutes. That's all you need. Read your notes. Say the phrases again. Look at yesterday's vocabulary. If you watched a video or listened to a podcast, review the key parts. You don't need to study everything again. Just remind your brain of the patterns it saw the day before. This technique works even better when you combine it with speaking or writing. For example, take yesterday's vocabulary and try to make 1 or 2 sentences. Use yesterday's grammar point to describe something from your day. If you're keeping a study journal, write 1 paragraph using what you learned yesterday. It doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is to keep the memory alive and create more connections. Lucas did this for months. He kept it simple, just a few minutes of review every time he studied, and over time his confidence grew. He stopped feeling like he was forgetting everything. When he had conversations in English, he could actually use the words he had studied. He no longer felt like his brain was a leaky bucket. Instead, he felt in control of his learning. All because of one small habit: reviewing before learning something new. This is something that learners of all levels can use. Whether you're a beginner or more advanced, your brain works the same way. It needs repetition, and it needs to see information more than once, spaced out over time. So every time you study, ask yourself, what did I learn yesterday? And start there. You can use a notebook, flashcards, or apps like Anki or Quizlet, but you don't even need technology. Just go back to your notes or say the words out loud again. Listen to the same short audio twice on different days. Read the same short paragraph a few times over the week. These simple reviews are not a waste of time. They are what turns short-term memory into real fluency. Let me give you a few examples of how to do this. Let's say yesterday you learned 10 new words related to food. Today, before you move on to new vocabulary, look at those 10 words again. Try to remember what they mean without checking. Say them out loud. Try to use 3 of them in a sentence. Then move on to your new lesson. If yesterday you watched a video about greetings in English, today, before watching something else, try to say the phrases again. Nice to meet you. How have you been? It's good to see you. Just saying them once or twice brings the sound and structure back to your mind. And if you wrote anything yesterday, maybe a few lines of a journal, read them again before you write something new, you'll start to notice patterns. You'll Start correcting your own mistakes. You'll start learning more deeply. So here's a question for you. What did you learn yesterday? Do you remember the last 3 phrases or words you studied? If not, don't worry. That's your brain being normal. But the key is to bring those ideas back again. Every day you review something old, you're making space to understand something new. Remember this. Learning isn't just about adding more. It's about reinforcing what you already know. And that's where real fluency comes from repetition, from connection, and from building one small brick at a time. Now, before your next study session, try this technique. Don't just jump into a new topic. Take a few minutes to revisit. The last one. Just 5 minutes of review can make your learning deeper, stronger, and much more effective. There's a big difference between learning passively and learning actively. Many English learners spend hours watching videos, listening to music, or reading texts. And that's a good start. Exposure to the language is important. But if you only consume English without interacting with it, you'll probably notice that your progress is slower than you hoped. Your brain receives the information, but it doesn't process it deeply enough to help you use it in real life. Passive learning can make you feel busy, but it often doesn't lead to real results. Now imagine this. You finish watching a short video in English. Instead of just moving to the next video, you pause. You repeat some of the phrases out loud. You try to say them in your own way. You write down 1 or 2 sentences. You create your own examples. Maybe you even ask yourself, how would I say this differently? That's active learning. And the learners who grow the fastest are the ones who move from passive to active, learning as soon as possible. I want to tell you about Priya, a woman from India who made this exact shift in her learning journey. Priya had been watching English content every day. She followed YouTube channels, watched American TV shows, and listened to English podcasts while cooking or commuting. But after 6 months, she felt stuck. She could understand more than before, but she still couldn't speak with confidence. When she tried to write or join conversations, her mind would go blank. At first, she was frustrated. How could she be spending so much time with English and still struggle to use it? She thought maybe she just wasn't talented in languages. But then she came across a language teacher online who explained something simple. Watching English videos is not the same as practicing English. That was a turning point for her. Priya decided to make a small change. She started using active learning techniques. The first thing she did was start repeating what she heard. When she watched a video or listened to a podcast, she would pause and say the sentence out loud. At first, it felt strange. She wasn't used to hearing her own voice in English. But after a few days, she started to notice a change. Her pronunciation was improving. She was remembering more phrases. She was even thinking in English a little more often. Then she added another step. She began writing down new phrases. Not just words, but full sentences. And she didn't stop there. She started creating her own sentences with those phrases. For example, if she heard, "I'm running late," she would write that down and then create a new sentence. "I'm running late for my English class." This simple habit turned her from a passive listener into an active participant. Active learning means using your brain, not just your eyes and ears. When you speak, write, or create something with the language, you're building stronger connections in your memory. You're training your brain to find the words when you need them, not just recognize them when someone else uses them. And the more you do it, the more confident you become. Here's a practical tip you can try starting today. The next time you watch a video or read something in English, ask yourself, what are 3 things I can do with this content? Maybe you can turn one sentence into a question. Maybe you can explain it to someone else. Maybe you can write it down and change one of the words to create a new sentence. For example, if you read, "She goes to the market every Sunday," you can ask yourself, what would it be if I changed the person or the verb? Then you say, "He goes to the gym every Sunday," or "They go to the park every Sunday." This is how you practice language flexibility. You can also turn simple content into a quiz for yourself. Let's say you watched a short video about morning routines. After you finish watching, ask yourself questions. What was the first thing the person did? What did they say about breakfast? Can you describe your own morning routine using similar vocabulary? These small actions keep your brain engaged and help you absorb the language more effectively. Another great technique is to use the pause and predict method. When you watch a video or listen to a story, pause before the speaker finishes the sentence and try to guess what comes next. For example, if someone says, Every morning, I wake up at, you try to guess, 6 a.m. or 7:30. Even if your guess is wrong, your brain is actively working with the language, and that's what matters most. Priya also began doing this with songs. Instead of just listening, she printed the lyrics and tried to sing along. Then she covered the lyrics and tried to remember the words. She also started using those lyrics as sentence examples. If she heard, "I can't stop thinking about you," she would try creating her own phrase. "I can't stop thinking about my exam." It sounds simple, but these kinds of exercises are powerful. They bring the language to life. Over time, Priya's speaking skills improved. Not because she found a secret formula, but because she practiced using English in a meaningful way. She stopped just listening and started responding. She stopped watching silently and started speaking out loud. She stopped being a passive learner and became an active one. That made all the difference. So if you feel like you've been doing everything but not seeing results, ask yourself, am I just watching and listening, or am I participating in the process? Are you turning your input into output? Are you creating with the language, not just consuming it? Because real learning happens when you take what you receive and do something with it. Here's one last idea to help you get started. Pick one English video or podcast today. Watch it or listen to it once. Then pause. Choose 3 phrases or sentences. Say them out loud, write them down, change them slightly, and say your version. Then, if possible, use one of those sentences in a message or in a voice recording. Do that consistently, and you'll notice a change not just in how much you understand, but in how much you can use. Sometimes we forget how far we've come because we are so focused on how far we still have to go. In language learning, it's easy to concentrate only on what we don't know. You hear a word you've never heard before. You struggle to understand a fast conversation. You freeze when someone asks you a question in English. And in those moments, you might feel like you're not improving. But let me ask you something. Are you paying attention to your wins? Even the small ones? Today, I want to remind you how powerful it is to celebrate small victories. Those tiny wins are the ones that build your confidence, keep you motivated, and make your brain associate learning English with something positive. When we celebrate our progress, we tell ourselves, "This is working. I'm getting better." And that message is much more powerful than we realize. Let me share a story with you. This is the story of Anna, a woman from Poland who started learning English on her own. She was a nurse, working long hours, and her only connection to English was through a few mobile apps and some TV shows she liked. She wasn't fluent, she wasn't even confident, but she was determined. And instead of comparing herself to native speakers or fluent learners on the internet, Anna decided to focus on her own journey. One of the first victories she celebrated was understanding a joke in an American sitcom. It wasn't a big thing, just a short, silly moment in a show. But for Anna, it was huge. She laughed, not because she read the translation, but because she actually got the joke. And she paused the episode, smiled to herself, and said out loud, "I understood that." That simple sentence gave her a boost of energy. From that day on, Anna made it a habit to write down every little victory. She had a notebook where she kept track of things like, "Today I ordered coffee in English and the barista understood me." Or, "I watched a 5-minute YouTube video without subtitles and understood most of it." Over time, that notebook filled up with dozens of small moments. And every time she felt discouraged or tired, she read through her old notes and reminded herself, "Look how much I've already done." That habit changed everything for her. It turned English from a mountain she had to climb into a series of steps she was already walking. She didn't wait for perfection, she celebrated progress. And because of that, she stayed consistent. She didn't give up, because those small wins kept her going. Now, maybe you're thinking, "But I haven't done anything big yet." Let me challenge that thought. Did you learn a new word this week? Did you recognize a phrase in a song? Did you respond to a comment in English on social media? Did you understand part of a conversation without translation? That's a win. That's something to celebrate. And here's a practical way to do that. Create a space. It can be a digital note on your phone, a notebook, or even a voice recording, where you record your English victories. Not just once a month, do it every week. At the end of the week, ask yourself, what did I do in English this week that I couldn't do before? Maybe you sent your first email in English, Maybe you remembered to say I'd like instead of I want when ordering food. These moments matter more than you think. Another way to celebrate is to share your wins with someone, tell a friend, post in a community, or send us a message. Really, we'd love to hear from you. Your story might inspire someone else who thinks they're not making progress. And your celebration can be a reminder that this journey is not just about grammar or pronunciation. It's about growth, confidence, and connection. Anna once told me something I never forgot. She said, "I used to wait for a big breakthrough, like suddenly speaking fluently. But now, I treat every step as something special. Every time I understand a word without translation, it's like unlocking a new piece of the world." That mindset helped her reach her goals faster because she wasn't constantly chasing something far away. She was enjoying the process day by day. I know many learners who feel like they're failing simply because they don't feel fluent yet. But fluency doesn't come in one big moment. It's built through hundreds of small wins. So instead of asking yourself, "Why am I not fluent yet?" try asking, "What have I done this week that shows I'm improving?" That question will give you a better answer and a lot more motivation. Think about it. Even understanding this podcast right now, that's a win. Maybe a year ago, you couldn't follow a full episode in English, and now you're here with me, listening, learning, connecting. That is something to celebrate. So let's make it a habit. Let's train our brains to see the good, not just the gap. Because when you celebrate, you stay in motion. You create positive energy that leads to more action. And that's exactly what we need when learning something new. Here's my question for you today. What was your last victory in English? Maybe it was understanding a new song. Maybe it was sending a message in English. Maybe it was learning 5 new words. Whatever it was, I want you to celebrate it. Write it down, smile, say it out loud, and if you feel like sharing, send us a message. We'd love to celebrate with you. Before we finish, let's take a moment to breathe together and reflect on everything we explored today. If you've made it this far in the episode, thank you. Really. That tells me you care about your English journey and you're willing to invest your time and energy into becoming better. That already makes you someone who learns faster than most. You're here, listening, focusing, and most importantly, showing up for yourself. And that matters more than you think. So, what did we talk about today? Let's go over the habits that truly make a difference for people who learn English fast. We started with the idea of building a habit, not just waiting for free time. Because let's be honest, free time doesn't usually appear by magic. Learners like Kenji showed us that even 15 minutes a day, when done consistently, beats hours of study once in a while. It's not about doing more, it's about doing it regularly. Then we explored the importance of being surrounded by English every single day. Amina from Egypt gave us that powerful reminder. You don't have to understand everything at first. You just need to stay close to the language. Changing the phone's language, listening to English songs, watching shows, it all trains. Your brain little by little. Your brain is always learning patterns, even when you think it's not. We also talked about keeping it simple. Miguel's story showed us that you don't need complicated grammar to function in English. You need real, useful phrases. Phrases that you'd actually say in real life. This is about being practical, not perfect. Which leads perfectly into our next point, letting go of perfection. Sophie from France used to fear mistakes. But once she started embracing them, everything changed. Mistakes became her best teachers. Then we explored repetition, but the smart kind. Daniel, from Nigeria, showed how spaced repetition can multiply your retention. Reviewing something once isn't enough, but revisiting it at the right times locks it into your memory. And from there, we moved into context. Sara from Brazil reminded us that reality makes language stick. When we feel emotions, hear sounds, see expressions, the brain connects everything and remembers it better. And of course, we talked about writing things down. Peter from Germany never goes anywhere without his notebook. You might prefer your phone's notes app or a simple piece of paper. The point is, write. Don't let your learning float away. Capture it. Review it. Make it yours. Because once you write it, it starts to belong to you. And we can't forget the power of connection. Fatima, from Turkey, didn't wait until she felt fluent. She joined an online group and practiced speaking every week. That's courage. That's commitment. And that's what made the difference. Real practice beats silent study every time. Speaking of real practice, do you remember the technique we discussed called shadowing? Repeating out loud with audio is one of the most powerful tools for pronunciation and rhythm. Andre, from Angola, practiced with short dialogues and his confidence grew fast. The rhythm of English began to live in his voice. Just by listening and repeating, he gained something that grammar books alone can't teach. Another great tip came from May in China. She didn't chase the goal of fluency. She focused on one simple goal each week. 5 new phrases, 1 full conversation, a few minutes of reading. Small goals kept her going. Because when the goal is small, it feels doable. And when something feels doable, we do it. Again and again. And every time you do something, whether it's a lesson, a practice, or a conversation, don't forget to review. Lucas, from Argentina, taught us the magic of reviewing what you've already seen before jumping into something new. Our brains love connection. Reviewing helps us see how one piece of knowledge relates to another. That's what builds fluency, not just learning, but connecting. Then came Priya's reminder. Don't just listen passively. Be active. Turn content into questions. Use new words to write your own sentences. Speak what you hear. Sing along. Comment in English. Turn input into output. That's how learning really sticks. And finally, we celebrated the idea of celebration. Anna, from Poland, kept a notebook of small victories. Every new word, every sentence she understood, every message she sent, she marked it down. And when motivation was low, she looked back and saw proof that she was growing. Her wins reminded her that this journey is working. So now it's your turn. Think about all these habits. Which ones are you already doing? Which one would you like to start today? Maybe it's shadowing. Maybe it's joining a conversation group. Maybe it's writing down 3 new words each day. You don't have to do everything at once. But choose something. Choose one small habit and build from there. Because that's how fluency is created. Step by step, habit by habit, not all at once. Thank you so much for spending this time with me here on the English Talk Community playlist. It's been a joy to guide you through these stories and habits. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and most of all, reminded that you are not alone in this journey. All around the world, people like you are learning English. And they're learning it not by being perfect, but by being present, being consistent, and believing that every step counts. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, someone who's also learning English and could use a little inspiration. Let's grow this community together. And don't forget to follow us so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, you don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. I'll see you in the next episode of the English Talk Community playlist.